Croeso i sgwrsiau ar arweinyddiaeth a gyflwynir gan Academi Wales. Ar ein podlediad rydym ni'n gwahodd gwesteion i siarad am eu taith a arweinyddol ac yn myfyrio am rai o'r ysbrydoliaethau a'r gwersi maen nhw wedi dysgu ar hyd y ffordd. Welcome to Conversations on Leadership hosted by Academi Wales. On our podcast, we invite guests to talk about their leadership journey and reflect on some of the inspirations and lessons we've learnt along the way.
Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Molly Dacey, and for our very first episode, I'd like to welcome Alex Walters, the Director of Academi Wales. Alex joined Academi Wales in December 2021 after working in various leadership roles within the civil service, including the UK Border Agency and Companies House. Alex has had a challenging but amazing year leading Academi out of the pandemic, and this is where we get to dig a little bit deeper into her journey. Thank you so much for joining us, Alex. I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. So, to begin, tell us what led you to choosing a career in the civil service.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. It's really nice to be here. In terms of the civil service, I am one of a possibly rare kind of breed of people who always wanted to be a civil servant. Lots of people say that they sort of fell into it and didn't really have any plans to, but actually my mum and dad were both civil servants. They both had lovely jobs, lovely careers. So it was always a really positive association for me. So it was quite intentional for me to join the civil service. So when I was at university, I somehow managed to get a sort of casual job in DWP, whatever it was called at the time, during the summer holidays for those 6 weeks every year. And then I was really pleased to get my first post in Companies House then when I left university. But it was definitely the career I always wanted, and I've always been a very proud civil servant.
I think that's so interesting that you say that, because I was going to kind of mention how not a lot of people or children think that's what I want my future to be. I want to be a civil servant. Like, you hear a lot of like astronaut or cowboy, and it's not always wants to be civil service. So I think it's really interesting that that's been your goal from the start. It's
not exactly a vocation normally. And I think that's quite sad, because actually civil service, I think, is a great place to work. There are so many benefits. It's still a really secure sort of place to work. I know it's not always, you know, if you want to work in big business and finance and earn huge salaries, it's perhaps not the place you want to be, but it's been great for me, and it's giving something back for people who have that sort of altruistic side and want to go into something where you can actually see the benefits of what you're delivering. I think it's a fantastic place to work.
Absolutely. So, reflecting on your previous experience and leaders you've observed over your time in the civil service, what does a good leader look like to you, and what behaviours must they show?
So, I'm a really firm believer that there is no one type of good leader. I think, well, for a start, I think everyone is a leader. Everyone is able to display sort of leadership behaviours and characteristics. So I learn from everybody, and it's not just people you would necessarily think are, you know, really super senior leaders. I've learned a lot from not just the good leaders, but the bad ones as well, sort of learning perhaps what not to do. But I think for me, the most important thing is having that focus on well-being and relationships. I think particularly in this virtual world where most of us are now working in, there's no point being a sort of taskmaster. You know, this is absolute focus on the task and the job. You've got to have those ways to make sure people are feeling okay and are in the right space to be able to deliver. So I think that comes absolutely first to me. And having worked for people who don't have that focus at all, it can be quite a difficult place to be. I think vision is so important. So having some sense, again, at all levels, having some sense of where you want your team to be headed, where you want your organisation, yourself, whatever it is, whatever level you're working at. I think just having that vision and having that really clear, you're much more likely to get there if you've got that really clear in your head. And yeah, there's loads of things. I mean, but being positive, I think I've worked for people in the past who aren't positive, and again, it just permeates through all of the culture, and it makes things really difficult. And the final thing I'll say is good judgment. So I've worked in roles in myself in the past where I know my judgment hasn't been brilliant, and it's taken me a little while to obtain that. And I just think, you know, you've got to have that ability to think, oh gosh, yes, this is a real issue. That's something I need to really look at and put some resource into. This thing can wait 6 weeks and we'll look at it in a little while. And I think that's something you develop during, you know, the course of your career. But I think that's really important too.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Just kind of a follow-up question from that. Is there anyone that you've had as a leader that you kind of think of as a role model, or someone that's had like a really big influence on you? Or do you think, observing all the leaders throughout your career, you've kind of taken bits from a lot of different leadership styles?
Yeah, I think probably taken bits from all. There is one particular leader that I've had in my past who was amazing, and it was during a time when I wasn't doing brilliantly at my job. I was a bit out of my depth, and I just wasn't sure where to go with it. And she really helped me. She really saw something in me, and it's back to that sort of people focus. She saw something in me and was able to grab that and say, right, and really help me grow and develop, and she was amazing. But the other person I would say is a coach that I had, and I would say to anybody, get a coach, and get a coach that you really gel with, because just having somebody who's been in that leadership position and can just ask you those difficult questions that you don't really want to think about, and that's where you really get the growth. If you know, get those questions that you've locked in a box somewhere and you never ever want to touch, those are the ones you really want to answer, and you know, that's where you get your growth from. So yeah, those are the two people I would say. But as I say, I've learned a lot from the not so good ones too.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that we as Academy know about you, but I'm not sure everyone would, is that you're a massive Spice Girls fan. So I was genuinely thinking you might have chosen one of the Spice Girls.
I can't believe it. Every time I've ever been asked that question, I've almost said a Spice Girl, and I thought, no, today I'm going to go, you know, no.
Well, now I am going to ask, if you could be a Spice Girl for a day, which one would it be?
Ginger.
Oh, straight. You've obviously thought about it quite a lot.
Yeah.
Good choice. So coming back slightly, working from home has been a really big challenge for a lot of people over the past few years. So how did you personally manage a work-life balance being a senior leader in such demanding times? Yeah,
so I love talking about this. I talk about this all the time, and I think it's really important for me to reflect and look back on you know, what's happened, and reflecting back on that early bit of the pandemic, when it was unprecedented and all those words that everybody used. I was one of those very unlucky people who had to do homeschooling for a number of months, and I know there were millions of us doing that. There were millions of people with other caring responsibilities and other really difficult things to juggle, so we all kind of knew what it was like. But looking back now, I kind of feel like I can do anything, because that was such a, you know, there was no work-life balance during that time. It was just trying to do what you could. So I do now, as we approach the summer holidays, and in the past when I might have thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to get my kids looked after so that I can work, you know, for these 6-7 weeks of the summer. Now it just feels like a drop in the ocean after having spent 6 months or whatever it was homeschooling. So I feel very grateful to have the level of sort of flexibility that we've got to be able to do that. But it's something I've always been really interested in, is how to get that work-life balance and how to help others achieve it. So it's really important to me that I'm really open and transparent about what I've got on. So my kids are my priority. They're not the organisation's priority. So I sort that out, but I still make sure that I'm available to do my job in the way that I should be doing it. So I'm really open, really organised. So my calendar shows exactly where I am, and that allows me to do drop-offs and pick-ups. But actually, if there's a really important meeting, I'm lucky enough to have the ability to kind of work around that and find, somebody else to pick them up on that day or whatever. But it is really important to me to be at the school shows and at the school gate parents' evening, all of those things. And I think it is doable if you do it in an open, transparent way. You do have to be organised. And my diary, if I lost it, I don't know what I'd do. It's colour-coded and all sorts. But I think it is doable. I managed to do a master's degree when I was at Company's House alongside work and with 2 kids.
Wow.
So if you can just sort of separate everything out and be organised about it, I do think it's doable to give you sufficient attention to all of those things.
Yeah. That's
Not
amazing.
easy, it's doable.
No, and I think when you think back to the start of the pandemic and the way everyone was kind of had to make such massive changes to the way they were working, there was a lot of anticipation towards, is the IT going to work and how is the organisations going to cope? But in reality, I think one of the biggest things was understanding kind of a work-life balance, and a lot of people lost it, and I think it had a massive impact.
It did, yeah.
And like you said, just being organised and having a plan. Like my one friend missed the commute to work, where she would have time to plan her day, and then on the way home she could kind of debrief with herself. So instead she started walking round the block of her house 5 times every morning before working from home, but it gave her that time to kind of understand, and it was all about kind of, like you just said, finding a way that works for you.
It's so personal for everybody. You've got to find a way, though, to be able to shut that door. You can't let any of them sort of encroach too far onto the other. So, if you're working until 5 o'clock, obviously things crop up. If you work until 5 o'clock, you're off at 5 o'clock. And if you can physically close that door to the office at home, brilliant. But actually for me, pre-COVID, I would have been, I wouldn't have seen my kids in the morning. I would have been up, out and in work by 7:15 so that I could be at the 3 o'clock pickup. Whereas now I can manage my diary so that if I needed to, I could do both and then log back on later. Not having to be at the office allows you that ability to kind of within reason, make that working day sort of work for you. So it actually, I found that balance now where I am more present for the family, but also still able to be present and visible for my job, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And now it kind of feels like we're entering a new phase post-pandemic. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing you right now?
So there's loads, isn't there? I mean, apart from the ongoing pandemic, the war, the political turmoil, all of that, which everyone is trying to get to grips with. I actually think there's a huge challenge around hybrid working. So I think, although it was massively challenging to all suddenly be working from home overnight, at least we were all working from home and we were able to put stuff in place. So remember those early days when it was all house party on the app and quizzes and all of that, and it had to be virtual. We had no choice. Now there are so many different wants and needs to cater for. It's really hard. So we're not yet in a world where we can say, right, and I don't know whether we'd ever want to be there, right, everybody back the way it used to be. I don't think that's where we'll be anymore. But equally, we're not all at home anymore. So as a leader, how do you effectively make sure everyone's all right in a hybrid team and make sure everyone's delivering? I think it's harder than in a virtual world. And people want more now, if you know what I mean. They expect more. They expect that work-life balance that we were talking about. So you could have 15 different working patterns on your team. It's really, really hard to sort of get the work done and lead in that context, I think.
And I think it's really important, like you said, everyone kind of wants and needs different things. It's trying to accommodate everyone and make everyone comfortable while still delivering these massive priorities that a team has.
Exactly.
My next question is around how much talent there is in the civil service at the moment. and we've got more and more people entering this sector for the first time. What would be your one piece of advice to aspiring Welsh public service leaders?
Okay, so this is an easy one for me because I've learned lots of lessons, but I learned one huge lesson, which when I say it, it sounds really obvious and a bit, people think, why didn't you know that already? But with quite a lot of people, it's resonated, and they say, actually, that's me too. And that lesson is to be curious. So I mentioned earlier that I was in a job where I wasn't doing a great job of it, and I was a bit out of my depth. And I think what had happened is I'd been used to being in roles where I knew stuff, and I was the person that people came to and said, what do you do with one of these? And what happens if you get one of those? And I always knew the answer, and I loved that. I loved kind of giving that information and coaching people and helping with that. And then when I went into a leadership role, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm the leader now. I need to do even more of that. I need to have those answers and be able to tell people. So I was in this new organisation, new role, team all sort of looking at me, and they'd ask me a question and I'd try and answer it. And actually, I'd either get the answer wrong or I'd spend ages and ages trying to find the right answer. I wasn't empowering the team. They knew better than me. And actually, just learning to, as a leader, it's not your job to have all the answers. Yeah. It's your job to ask the right questions and to get that culture right, to empower people, to, the team of the experts, they are the ones that have the answers. So just giving them the confidence to voice those answers, I suppose. That was a huge sort of learning curve for me. Yeah. And it really helped me make the shift that I needed to not have that imposter syndrome and not feel out of my depth anymore. Yeah. So, that would be my
I think that's an amazing piece of advice. I think it's really, really valuable for a lot of people. Yeah. So thank you so much for all your stories and advice today. But before we finish, I just wanted to ask a few quick-fire questions for our listeners to get to know you a bit better, if that's okay.
Yes.
Just really simple, one word, first thing that comes to your mind questions.
Okay.
What is your favourite word?
My favourite word? Discombobulated.
Oh, good one. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning person.
Have you always been a morning person?
No. At uni, a night owl probably, and it's just changed over time, yeah.
What motivates you?
Doing the best job that I can. That sounds a bit boring, but
no,
it is.
Yeah. Have you ever broken a bone in your body?
No, never. No.
What's your favourite noise?
I don't know. Do you know, I really do... Shouting too much now. I do like, that ASMR thing where they cut through, like, kinetic sand. I could watch that all day. That's a good noise. Yeah, that crunchy kind
answer. Brilliant. Do you play or have you ever played a musical instrument?
I do not. I have played the trumpet, the flute and the guitar, and I am not musical at all, and I probably spent about a year on each one and then gave up.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
So I always wanted to be a music producer. Again, I'm not musical. I think I just wanted to work with pop stars probably, but I always used to watch like Nicky Chapman on he's too young, on Pop Stars, the sort of precursor to the X Factor. I'd love to do, you picking the ones that are the future of music. I would
quite different to working in the civil service then.
Yeah.
What's the last book that you read?
Oh, goodness me. I read a lot and they're all on my Kindle and I can never remember the names of them. Lisa Jewell, probably. I read sort of is it something about her disappearing? I can never remember the title because it's not on the front of the book on my Kindle.
That's fine. What is your favourite type of food?
French food.
Oh, brilliant. And lastly, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I would say... reading minds, knowing what people are thinking. Yeah.
Very good choice. Would probably get you quite far in the civil service, I think. So thank you so much for joining us, Alex, and I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Mae ein podlediad sgyrsiau ar arweinyddiaeth ar gael trwy ein gwefan ac mae'r recordiad yma yn hawlfraint i Lywodraeth Cymru. Our Conversations on Leadership podcast is available through our website. This recording is copyright of Welsh Government.